what I find, Alisa, is on college campuses, if they're going to bring up, say, something like, oh, the God of the Old Testament's evil, you have to ask them, by what moral standard are you judging that to be evil?
I've heard you say this, that every claim it has a moral core. How would you take if an atheist said, there's so much suffering in the world? How does that have a moral core?
Yeah, I always say, why is suffering bad if there's no God, right? Because there's no good or bad unless God exists, because he is the standard of good. The analogy I like to use, at least lately anyway, um, is from sports. Uh, why don't we use the sport that the world knows, soccer, right? How do you know that your player scoring a goal is better than a player on the other team scoring a goal? The only way you could know that your team scoring a goal is better is if you know the purpose of the game, right? If there's no purpose to the game, you can't say any goal or non-goal is a good or bad play, because there's no purpose. And in order for you to say a goal for us is good and a goal against us is bad, you have to know the purpose of the game. You have to know that getting more goals is the purpose than having the other team score more goals against you. Without purpose, you can't say here's a good play, here's a bad play. Same thing is true in life. You can't say here's a good way to live or a bad way to live unless you know the overall objective of life, the overall purpose of life. And if there is no God, there is no purpose to life. That's the problem. And so what I find, Alisa, is on college campuses, if they're going to bring up, say, something like, oh, the God of the Old Testament's evil, you have to ask them, by what moral standard are you judging that to be evil? You'd have to have a moral standard in order to say what God does is evil. You'd also have to have a purpose for life to say, well, say God kills the Canaanites. It's wrong to kill people. Okay, but what's the purpose of life? Or why is it wrong to kill people unless there is a purpose to life, right? And is God bound by the same rules we are? We don't have the authority to take life, because we're not the creators of life. But of course, God, if he does exist, he has the authority to take life anytime he wants, right? I mean, if God exists and there is an afterlife, people don't die, they just change locations, right? They go from this life to the next life, and it's up to God when that happens. So almost every objection, not all, but almost every objection I discover that the atheists bring has some sort of moral core. Or even unbelievers. So they may be theists, but they object to Christianity. What about those that have never heard? That's a moral question. It impugns the morality of God. Why doesn't he get his gospel to everyone? Or why did God create people he knew would go to hell? That's a moral question. There are so many moral questions that presuppose a standard in order to even be brought up. And of course, they need a standard to be answered too. The question is, where does that standard come from? Now, the moral argument doesn't prove the Christian God. It could be the Christian God, but it does show that there has to be some sort of theistic God in order to even bring up these objections for them to have any weight.